Today, we're really excited to have Liberty Gates. The first few episodes have just been me and my wife yapping around and talking about our story, but we're really excited that we actually have real professionals, people who know a bit more about what our kids go through to help us understand some certain concepts. So,
welcome to another episode of the Nurture with Grace podcast. We hope this episode gives you encouragement, ideas, and practical strategies as you continue raising your young champions. You're doing an amazing job, and your little ones are truly blessed to have you. Please remember, this content is for general information and encouragement only, not medical or clinical advice. If you need extra support, we encourage you to reach out to a qualified professional.
So, Liberty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, just to give you a bit of context, our son has been going to Liberty's clinic for the last couple of years, and they've done such a great job with our son, and we're really, really grateful for what you guys do and how we've supported Ian. We've seen so much growth. So we're really excited that you can make it today. So Ruth and I, we've known you for about 20 years.
Yes.
And more than 20 years.
More than 20 years,
and throughout that time we've known you, you've been working in this industry as a speech pathologist. I'm keen to understand what got you into this industry and what has led you to staying this long, even to a point of starting a business and building a team around it.
Yeah, good question. So when I was in school, I was absolutely set for pharmacy, actually.
Wow.
And then I did this project in school for one of my subjects back in '97. And as part of that project, I interviewed different professionals who were in Crippled Children's Association, which is now called Novita. Back then it was CCA. And I just really clicked with the idea of speech pathology. I'd never heard of it before, but I ended up saying to the speech pathologist, like, this just sounds really interesting. Could I spend some time seeing what you do? So I spent half a day with her as part of this project, looking at what she did and working with the kids. And then I loved it so much that I asked to do work experience at the end of year 12 after my exams, when I still had time to change my uni preferences. And that was it. I did work experience and went, yep, this is what I want to do. So then changed my preferences, put speech pathology first. And then I started working at Crippled Children's Association. And then I was there when it changed to Novita as well. And while I was doing that, I just had I had a couple of Christian schools on my caseload, and found that I really enjoyed kind of being in schools and doing that kind of thing as well. And it was one of my schools, actually, Tyndale, who we just really clicked, and they said, have you ever thought about doing private practice? And at the same time, there was another school that I went in that said, it's taken us 2 years to find a private speech pathologist to come into this school. And while all of that was happening, we were just having some conversations in my workplace as well about private practice and how few there are in this area. At the time, only Flinders put out new grads for speech pathology. And so most people seem to live down south, and most private practices were down south of the city. And so kind of north of the city, there just wasn't very much. And so I kept on getting this thing of, have you ever thought about private practice? Have you ever thought about private practice? And then eventually I went, yeah, I'm actually kind of thinking about private practice. So it was only ever going to be just me on my own. But then the need just grew so much, and straight away, we just had so many people coming through quite quickly. And so then it was like, well, maybe I'll just bring on one person and, just have maybe a couple of us doing it. And so I brought on someone else, and it got busier and busier. And then it was like, oh, maybe just one more person. Anyway, so we ended up hiring a little clinic space that had three consulting rooms. And then we outgrew that. And then we moved to Modbury and had 5 consulting rooms. And then we outgrew that. And so then we got a place in that we are now, Tea Tree Gully, where we finally have 11 consulting rooms. And as part of this process, a lot of our speech pathologists have communicated over the years how great it would be to have an OT working with us as well. Because OTs are just amazing people. They're so skilled. They know so much. Their knowledge is absolutely astounding. And this idea of being able to do speech and OT together, and even just being able to learn from each other and grow through that way, way is so helpful for our speech pathology team. So then we invited Sarah, who all of us have known for 20 plus years. We invited Sarah to join our team. Actually, to be honest, I had been saying to Sarah over the last 20 years, you'd be great in private practice. Have you thought about doing pediatrics? You'd be really good at private practice, Sarah. And to my absolute joy, she decided to join our team a couple of years ago, and it's just been fantastic. So we're building that OT side of things now, and it's been just a real blessing to be able to work alongside occupational therapists and learn more and build what we're able to offer and what we can do. So so the intent was I would do private practice on my own, and then it's just kind of grown because the need has been so significant, and we just want to be able to help as many kids as we can.
Awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know what? We've become the beneficiaries of that. Thanks to you following that dream. So good. So good. So for parents who are brand new to this, what does a speech pathologist actually do for children?
Yeah. So it's funny, when a lot of people hear about speech pathologists, they go like, so you work with stuttering. And I'm like, Yes, we do. Yes, that is a very small part of all of the different things we do. But yes, speech pathologists work in any area of communication. So that means that for kids who have difficulties with their speech, so like the way they pronounce things, their sounds of speech, if they have their sounds all mixed up or they can't say certain sounds, we help them to be able to verbally say those sounds to be able to be understood by other people. So we work with speech sounds. We work with language. Language means being able to understand what people are saying to you and being able to use words to put sentences together to communicate what you want to say, to convey your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, your what you want, what you need to be able to recount your day. So we work a lot in being able to understand what people are saying to you and being able to use language to put it together. Now, not all kids are verbal. And so a lot of that communication looks like, it's called AAC, which stands for Alternative Augmentative Communication. And what that might mean is using a device to be able to communicate instead of using verbal words for kids who are non-speaking. It might also be using keyword signs. So that's like using some Auslan signs to be able to supplement your talking if it's difficult to understand what someone is saying. And it's also a really great way that we use to encourage the development of language for kids who will develop the capacity to talk, but they're not there yet. We teach them to talk with their hands first and then with their mouth later on. Speech pathologists also work a lot in the area of social language. So a lot of our kids who are on the autism spectrum are verbal, they can talk, but they really struggle with understanding how to use language in a social way. How do I initiate an interaction? How do I continue an interaction? How do I have a conversation? If someone says something to me, how do I respond? What's the expected way to respond so that I can build relationships with people? So that social communication side of things is a really big part of speech pathology that a lot of people don't realise that we do. Another part of communication is written communication. So speech pathologists work a lot with the literacy side of things, being able to help kids who haven't learnt to read and write through school learn to be able to read and to be able to put sentences together in writing, because that written communication, of course, is a huge part of communication in the world. So we look at across the whole spectrum of communication, from speech sounds to language to fluency. So again, kids who stutter, fluency is something that we do as well. Social language, literacy, reading. And there's also a part of speech pathology for kids that works on the feeding side of things as well. So for kids who are fussy feeders. And as well as that, there's a whole adult side of speech pathology that works in hospitals and in rehab centres for people who've had strokes, for people who had brain injuries, for people who are aging, to work on that cognitive side of things as well, that memory, language, all of that. So that's not my field, the adult side, but that's a really big part of speech pathology as well. So kind of from peds to adults, there's a really broad spectrum of the things that we actually work with, much more than just the fluency, stuttering side of things. So yeah, it's a huge area every day. You know, the kids that we see are also different from each other, and it's a very varied work that we do. It's great.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. I must admit, even after being doing speech for the last couple of years, there's a lot of the scope of the things that are done are a lot more than I actually thought, which is good for us because we can still identify some of that our son needs in the future. And I guess it's because, you're working on different skills and building up to that. One thing I was going to ask is, before we start talking about specific programs, how can a parent even tell that they need speech pathology? What I'm trying to look at is, what are some of the key signs or the markers that shows that it's time to seek help? Because that's where we notice a lot of the biggest challenges for people, knowing that we need help now. You're able to give us example in terms of they're not babbling in the next 12 months, very few words. What are some of the markers that someone is there time to get help?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. And on our website, which is libertyspeech.com.au or libertyalliedhealth.com.au, they'll both get you there. We have a whole lot of checklists that we've put out where you can look at what your child is doing and what's kind of expected for their age. One really important thing that I would suggest as a good marker is 2 is for talking. If your child is 2 and they're not talking, then that's going to raise some concerns. It's really important to be able to seek help as soon as you notice those differences. And, for some parents, they might not get there in those early intervention stages, but, today is always the best time to start looking into it. So if your child is 2 and they're not talking yet, that's a really big sign that you might want to look into that. If your child is 3 and people struggle to understand what your child is saying, then that's another one of those really big markers, where if your child is not able to have a basic conversation with someone and be understood by an adult who's talking to them, then that's another sign as well that it's a good idea to look into those things. Another sign is if you're finding that your child is not able to socially engage with other kids. So if, for parents whose kids are in childcare, for instance, if they're not able to play with the other children, or they tend to isolate themselves and they just sit on their own and kind of do their own thing, then that's another sign as well. We also notice some things, like particularly with the autism side of things, you might see that the way that your child plays is just a little bit not what you expect. So you might see that instead of playing with toys or pretending to be a fireman or a superhero or something like that, that they tend to do a lot of repetitive play. So lining toys up and then moving them away and lining them up again, or sorting things. So I'm putting all of the yellow ones here, or the red ones here, or the purple ones here. And they have you might often see this non-functional kind of way of playing where it just seems like there's not, imaginative play happening. There's not cooperative play with other people happening. It's just the same thing over and over again, or just that non-functional, like lining things up, sorting things out. When you see that kind of play happening, that's another flag as well. So when you're finding that kids are not connecting socially with people, when they're doing some of that repetitive kind of play, those are some flags as well that it's a good idea to start to look into it a little bit more and go, is there something else going on here? Is there a reason why my child is doing these things that were just not what I was expecting?
Do you see it playing out differently in bilingual families? Obviously, we're living in a place like Australia where it's very multicultural, different languages. How do parents know when it's normal versus when they need to be concerned, especially with multilingual families?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do often get asked this one. And when we talk about, we have developmental norms on our website to kind of say at this age, your child should be doing these things. But that doesn't mean that they need to be doing those things in English. So whatever the family's home language is, it doesn't mean they need to have their English skills at this point. It means they need to have their home language, their mother tongue skills at this point. So if you have a child who is 2 and not talking in any language, then that's cause for concern. So on a lot of checklists that you see that are from English-speaking countries, you'll see, this is the grammar that's expected. It doesn't mean, if you're looking at that as a bilingual family, you don't need to go, oh, well, that's in English. They're not doing that in English. Oh, that's a concern. Can they use grammar? Just general grammar. Can they put sentences together in your mother tongue? So kind of translating those expectations to what your language is that you mostly speak at home, that's what we want to see. So are they using the sounds of speech in your language? Can people from your language understand what your child is saying? Can your child begin an interaction with someone else using your language who understands it? and be able to carry on that interaction with those families. So it's really important that when you're looking at all of these checklists that are all written in English for English speaking kids, that you're going, okay, but in my language, can they do those things? And if they can't do those things in our mother tongue, then it's time to get that looked into.
Those are really good points, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, actually, those are some of the things that we noticed with our son, going, yep, this childcare mentioned this, and we're like, okay, we've been thinking about it, but I think we really do need to do something about this. So that's really good.
Yeah. And childcare is often a first point of call for those things, because they are with the kids a lot. And sometimes, particularly if you have one child, you don't always get to see those interactions with other kids. But of course, in childcare, they're seeing your child around other kids and they're watching those interactions. So they often, have really good insight into what's happening with that social sphere as well, which is very helpful.
Oh, very good. There's so much we did not understand or were aware before starting, which is interesting because I work in healthcare. But I think my understanding of speech was more with adults, feeding and those sorts of things. So I'm not surprised. So parents often worry, the first session, what will it be like, when they go to a speech appointment. So what actually happens in the first appointment for a new parent who's just wondering about it?
That's a really good point, that often when you start something like this, you might not know what to expect, and it is going to be different for different kids, different ages, different presentations. So sometimes when we have someone come in, they might come just for an assessment, in which case that first session will be assessment. Other kids who've come in, they've already received a diagnosis somewhere and they're coming in for therapy. We might spend a bit of time building rapport, getting to know the child before we get to assessment. But let's talk about assessment and what that looks like, because it's not as intimidating as it sounds. So when we have, let's say, a young child come in and we're going to do an assessment, the first thing that we'll do at my practice, even before the family comes in, we'll send out forms. So you should get this from most places, I think, where you get forms sent out and you fill those forms in and just give as much information as you can about your child, so that the person reading it has an idea of what your child is like before they come in. And that information helps us know, can we start with assessment? How much, what kind of things do we need to assess? Are we looking at speech sounds? Are we looking at language? Are we looking at kind of everything? So that's the first step before you even come into a clinic, is just giving us as much information as you can. So particularly if you can give examples of things that your child does, that's really helpful. And then when you come in for that first session, for children, the first thing we're really wanting to make sure is that we build rapport with this child. So we want the child to be able to engage with us. Now, parents always come with so much they want to tell us, and that's really, really important. So we want to be able to talk to the parent and ask questions, but the first thing we want to do is to engage with a child. So we might engage with a child for a little bit and play a game with them, and then we might get them to do something while we then chat with the parents, and they can play while we're doing that. Sometimes that is absolutely not possible at all, and so you just can't do that, and we go, okay, well, we'll need to do a separate session where we can talk to the parents later on. And sometimes we just need to focus 100% on the child. So when we get to do the assessment side of things, a speech assessment where we're looking at how kids say the speech sounds, that means that the child is going to look at some pictures or objects and name them. And we're writing down what they say, how they say it, so that we're noting all of their speech errors. A language assessment for little kids, it's partly like a picture book where you look at pictures and point to things and name things. But for little kids, there's also an object kind of thing as well, where we're, and these kinds of assessments are actually really from birth, and part of it is we ask parents, what do they do at home? What words do they say? Can you give us examples of when your child has done this? And other parts of it, we will use the toys with the child, and we'll be writing down the things that they say and the things that they do, and do they engage with us? Do they use words? Are they babbling? Are they making sounds? So a lot of those, for really little kids, that early assessment looks like play and some looking at pictures and things like that. For older kids, it's kind of it's more of just the picture, looking at pictures and getting the child to say things and point to things and then make up sentences for us and things like that. So an assessment can take a while, particularly if you're looking at speech and language, and for some older kids, maybe we'll be looking at their reading and writing as well. It can take a long time. Sometimes we'll book those like in the school holidays. Parents might want to come and just knock it all out in like a 3-hour block, and that's a lot. It's a lot for the therapist and for the kid and the parents. We all leave with very tired brains. Ideally, we kind of do them in kind of hour blocks. But there are different ways that you can do it, and we vary it on what the child's abilities are. So if most kids can't sit through a full 3-hour block, we'll usually break it up, and we'll make sure that assessments, we're also doing some games and have motivators to keep it fun for the child. So yes, early on we do need to do assessment. Might be the first session, might be the second session, but the important thing is that we build rapport and engage with a child so that we know that we can build a relationship with them. We do the formal assessment, which tells us, compared to other kids of the same age, what can they do, what can't they do, so that we can start to build goals and know where we can fill in those gaps that they've got. Another really important thing is that information gathering from the parents, and this is something particularly for kids who are on the NDIS. The NDIS want us to do something that's called a support plan, and support plans are so helpful. What this means is we have like an hour-long meeting with the parents, and we just say, tell us about your child, tell us about their communication, tell us about their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills, tell us about what they can do with their hands and their bodies, their coordination, tell us about their sleep, tell us about their behaviour. So we just kind of cover all these different aspects, because for me as a speech pathologist, that assessment can tell me some very specific things about the speech and language, but it doesn't tell me about the child's life. It doesn't tell me what the parents' priorities are. It doesn't tell me what the biggest difficulties are. So we use that formal assessment that we do, and we use that information we've got from the parents for us to really understand this child, this family, where the needs are, and then after that we can start making goals and we can start working towards those goals. So that's kind of what it looks like. Yeah. Then the therapy process, a lot of that is play. So we do a lot of play, a lot of songs, a lot of stories, and we're building language, modelling language, and bringing communication in through play-based therapy. For older kids, we do a lot more explicit kind of teaching, and we bring in games and fun activities around this, so that therapy is always fun. Kids should look forward to coming to therapy. So it's a lot of fun. So that's what it looks like. That's kind of the early part of it, is the investigation stage, to find out who is this child. Let's learn about the child. Let's learn about the family. Let's make some goals, and then the therapy starts. That's the fun bit. And then every kind of 12 to 24 months, then we want to reassess to kind of see what progress has been made. How are we going? Let's reset our goals to see how they're going and what their needs are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Therapy definitely is fun. That is one thing that our son looks forward to.
I love that.
So it's definitely something he looks forward to. If you tell him on Monday, what are you going to do today? You tell him, you're going to go to school and you're going to go to see Sarah and Jess. Yeah, he's going to be excited.
That's the best.
So that's something he's really looking forward to. I guess the next question is, how do you decide whether they need, now that you've had you've got both speech and OT in the practice, how do you decide what do they need? Do they need this, or do they need speech, or do they need OT or occupational therapy?
So when we before someone comes in, we send out forms to parents to fill out, and we have questions there about speech and language and questions there about occupational therapy. So if someone comes in and they say, I just need a speech therapist, and we still send out that form, and we might look at it and go, you've ticked a few boxes here that looks like actually OT might be helpful. And likewise, if someone comes in going, I'm looking for an occupational therapist, but then they've ticked some things going that, about their communication, that they're not communicating, then the OT will look at it and go, we might need speech as well. Then once we start to have those sessions with a child, we'll be asking some more questions and we'll be making observations. And so because we know enough about what other professions do, it means that then we will often go, I really think it would be beneficial for you to have this as well. And, for other things too, it might be physiotherapy. We don't offer physiotherapy in our practice, but that might be something where we go, I really think that physiotherapy or hydrotherapy would be helpful. So, and as part of our support plan as well, where we interview parents, we ask all of those questions and get that idea of what is this child's functioning like. Often in that process, we'll realise that there are some other gaps and some other needs, and because we have knowledge of other therapies, we can go, you know what, it really sounds like your child would benefit from this other therapy. So we might make referrals then or suggest places where parents can go to get different kinds of therapies. Or of course, if we have both speech and OT, so we'll often try and be able to find appointments or find times for someone to be able to get the other therapy that they need in our practice as well. And if not, we refer them on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because when we started the process, we did not know that we needed an OT, an occupational therapist, until further down the line.
Yes.
Because obviously our initial priority was speech. Obviously, our son was about 3 years old, not speaking, not verbal. So it's not until further down the line. And I think for us, it's because we didn't know what to expect. So we're glad that, we're able to sort of identify what we needed as that went along.
Yes.
I guess the next question is, if you were to, and this relates to a lot about expectations and people knowing what the journey ahead looks like, because I think when you start the process, you do not understand how it looks like, what to expect in the next month, the next few months. If you were to plot, to map out the whole process, let's say on a calendar, on a fridge calendar for the next 12 months, what some of the milestones or reviews would you expect to pop up along the timeline? Like if you had to map out, let's say we're trying to create a realistic plan for the next year, what are some of the things we can start to expect? And obviously, I know that depends on a child-to-child basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to understand that there are certain requirements within NDIS. So if you've gone through that process and you've started at the very beginning with that assessment and then, that information gathering, you might have already come with NDIS, or that might be your very first introduction, which means we might be saying the next step is to approach NDIS and go through all of that process. If a child is then, significantly delayed and they are then receiving NDIS for that early intervention stage, they have certain requirements for reporting as well. Or you might have come through Medicare. Medicare have GPs can refer to, if you're paying privately for therapy and you're not on NDIS, then a GP might refer for some Medicare sessions, which means that for 5 sessions, they can be allocated to a combination of speech, OT, different therapies. And that has a different process as well. So if you are going the Medicare route, which means you pay out of pocket and then Medicare gives you, I think it's about $60 back out of those sessions, then we have requirements where we need to send a letter to the doctor after the first session and then after the 5th session. So then there's a bit of, checking in around that. If you're in the NDIS, then there is some reporting requirements that are a little bit more. So you get given a plan through NDIS, and when that plan, about 6 weeks before that plan is set to expire, then the NDIS want some updated documents. So what they want is to see that there have been some formal assessments done. They want a copy of the support plan, and then they want a progress review. So what that progress review looks like is, and most of this is what the therapist will do in kind of non-face-to-face time, where they'll put together a report that summarises what the therapy has been, what the goals have been, how the therapy has been working towards those goals, and what the progress is that's being made. So it's important to understand, and again with NDIS funding, it covers both that face-to-face therapy time, but NDIS also have a lot of requirements for that non-face-to-face time, those written documents, because they want to see that things are being done properly, that the funding that the government is providing is being used well, and that it's being used to address the goals that were agreed upon between the NDIS and the parent. So then therapists have a responsibility to be reporting towards those things to show that what we're doing is benefiting the child, to show that it's making progress, and to show that we are working towards those goals. So they're the things. So in a 12-month stage, you would have that assessment, support plan, therapy, and then when that plan is coming towards its end, then there'll be that progress report will be needed as well. For some kids, as part of that, particularly if it's like a 24-month plan, as you come towards the end of that, then we'll need to go through the assessment process again so that we can show with numbers, here is the progress that the child has made. So it might be kind of going back to that assessment. And even if it's not an NDIS thing, it's always a good idea to reassess every 12 to 24 months because, we can't keep goals going on an assessment that's 2, 3, 4 years old because obviously kids develop a lot themselves through that stage. So reassessment throughout the process is really, really important to keep refining those goals. But they're the things you can expect. There'll be that therapy stage, which is the fun stage, that's kind of the longest part of that journey. And then there'll be some reassessment, refining goals, continuing the therapy, reassessment, refining goals, continuing the therapy, so that we continue to work on that child's goals together with the family.
Just a quick follow-up on that one. You mentioned about goals. Because a lot of times as a parent, it's hard to set goals because you don't know what goals to set in the first place. Because like I said, for us, when we started the process, we just wanted him to talk. But then it's hard for us to sort of know that it's not until later on as we talk to people that we follow up the process. Okay, this is the kind of goals you should be setting for this. How do you help someone set those goals for the child?
That's a really great question. And it is tricky because often these goals at the initial NDIS plan are set between the parents and the NDIS worker that they provide. Now, the NDIS worker might be a therapist or might not be. They do have some therapists who are working in that space. But if someone isn't a therapist, sometimes the therapist's goals might be a little bit different. So what that looks like then is that you will come initially with a set of goals. Those goals are usually fairly broad. So it might be to improve the child's communication. So then the speech pathologist will look within that and go, okay, so what do I need to do to improve this child's communication? My formal assessment is going to show me that we need to work on speech sounds. So that's my goal. We need to work on their understanding of language. We need to work on their use of language, or maybe we need to bring in some AAC, like a device to communicate. So we will formulate our specific goals based on the broader goals that NDIS give. Sometimes we do find that the goals for NDIS are just not what we would perhaps suggest. And in that case, we then, in our support plan, we write, here are the goals that I would suggest as therapists. And then again, in that progress review, we will also write, here are the goals that I suggest. And so then we just remind parents, those things are in there. We've written out some goals that you might want to take to that meeting and just maybe talk about this with your NDIS worker. And then there can be some discussion around that. And often what we see is those goals will then be incorporated into the next set of goals to be a little bit more specific. So I wouldn't worry too much about those goals that very first meeting, those goals. You don't know necessarily until you've started therapy. You don't really know what those goals are going to be, but they're generally written broadly enough at the start that therapists can fit their goals into those fairly broad things like communication in general, or emotional regulation, or being able to improve his physical development. We can bring our goals into those things, and then you can refine them and make them more specific at your next plan. So is that what you found as well?
Yeah, that's what we found. Because we came into the very broad. We want him to talk and improve communication, but it's not until you start to understand, okay, these are the possible milestones. And I think the more clear you are on the goals, the more we found it's helped us with expectation management.
Absolutely.
Yes. Also, even just being able to know that, because sometimes if you don't have clear visibility of what's happening within the session, you might be thinking, okay, what are they doing and how is that contributing to the goal? I mean, thankfully you guys do some really comprehensive reports saying we were doing these activities and these are the goals we are targeting. So that's obviously very, very important. But once you understand that, it just really helps you put you at ease as a parent.
Yeah.
And I agree. We found that coming to you guys, because obviously before we started, we had started with a different company. And which brings me to my next point, progress can feel really slow.
Yes.
When we start this, and for a parent who's anxious, what am I even doing? I don't even know the goals and all that. What the tiny signs or anything that a parent should celebrate, just to know, hey, even though I can't see anything, we are making progress?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's so important. That is such an important thing. And it's really something that we as therapists need to make sure that we're conveying, like, wow, this is a really exciting thing. We need to celebrate this. Because you're right, when progress is slow, the little things are so important. I used to work with severe multiple disability, and progress then would be like, oh, he looked at the picture. Oh my goodness, he looked at the picture, guys. We need to celebrate this. He looked at the picture, and it's huge. And so progress might be that they said some sounds, that a child has created some babble. It might not even sound like a word. That's progress. That's exciting. It might be that they found a picture on the device that we're using, AAC, and they've pressed a picture. Oh my goodness, that's so cool. He just found it and he pressed it and it said the word, you guys. That's so exciting. Sometimes it might be something like a child engages with you. So he looks up at you and acknowledges that you're there just by looking at you for the first time, particularly for a child who's been very much in his own world. When he looks at you, that's so exciting. Or when, a little girl hands you something. Oh, that's such a great thing to celebrate. So that's something that's really important for us as therapists, is to point out those moments and to be able to show, like, this is actually, it might seem little, but this is another step. It's just another step towards where we're going. Wow, he's never done that before. She hasn't done that in my session and she just did. That's so great. So for us, absolutely looking out for those things, because you need those wins. And you need to know, as a family, you need to know, like, my kid did something really incredible today, and to everyone else it might not seem like much, but it's huge. And we do absolutely need to celebrate the little things along the way, for sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is and for us, we've learned the hard way. It's, you have to celebrate those little milestones, and it's a big learning process for us to know that, this is actually a very, very big deal.
Yeah, so absolutely. And there's so much joy in it. I remember my youngest daughter, when she was a baby, so my kids don't have additional needs, but when they were babies, before they could use their mouths to talk, we introduced keyword signing. So great thing to do with babies, because their hands can do things before their mouths can. And I remember my littlest, she's 11 now, but when she was a baby, she was in her high chair and she would get really fussy and frustrated, and she was a really chill baby, but it was always in the high chair. And I was like, do you want more food? Do you want more drink? I don't know what you want, sweetheart. Do you want this? Do you want that? And then, because we'd been teaching her keyword signs, one day she was about, I think, maybe 10 months old, and she signed, this is play. And she signed play. I was like, oh, sweetheart, you're up here, you're fussing because you don't want more food, you don't want more drink, you just want to go and play. And that breakthrough moment of, I know what you're thinking now. I know what's on your mind. You've communicated something to me, and now I can understand what you want, what you need. And so I could get her out of the high chair and go, okay, let's play, let's go play. That is a really shining moment for me of that experience of going, wow, something has just happened, and I understand my child a little bit more, and they did something to communicate with me, and that is huge. And so again, with the kids that I work with, when that child does that first sign or says that first word and it conveys something, it's a connection that you're making of, we just connected. My child has just said something and I know what they're thinking now. I know one thing that's on their mind right now. Yeah, we celebrate those for sure.
That's exciting. And I think it takes a lot of rewiring for us as parents in terms of being able to notice, being able to notice. I mean, it's crazy because obviously we've got a lot of other things that we worry about, but it takes a lot of rewiring to do that. One thing I was going to ask you is, what are some simple games or activities that parent can try at home to support communication? Because I guess for us, what we've noticed is not everyone who may be listening to this might be able to have something like the NDIS system, or might be able to have that supports. What are some things they can try at home to improve communication?
Yeah, I would recommend for everyone with kids to join a toy library. Because there are so many toys and so many games, and they're really expensive, and kids get sick of toys quite quickly. So joining a toy library, it's not expensive. It's just through your local library. Quite a lot of them have it. And you've got this whole room where you can just go, and with your library card you can borrow toys and games, and even like some big toys as well. So I would encourage that first of all. But there are so many things you can do just with simple things that you have at home. Like if you've got bubbles, there is so much communication that you can get. You can blow the bubbles and you can say, pop bubble, pop bubble, pop bubble, pop bubble with my finger. I popped a bubble with my nose. I popped a bubble with my foot. Pop bubble, pop bubble. You can do things like you bring out the bubble wand and you wait and see if the child shows anticipation, and then when they show that, you can blow the bubbles. You can see if you can give them the bubble wand and tightly screwed on and they can't do anything with it, and you can show them how to ask for help. For that, I would use a keyword sign, help, and get the child to be able to make that sign so that then I'll help them and blow the bubbles. So bubbles is a great one. There's just so much. And who doesn't love bubbles? Kids love bubbles. It's always a winner. So that's a really good one. Play-Doh can be another really good one as well. There's a lot you can do with Play-Doh. Again, you can, using words like roll the Play-Doh, push the Play-Doh, poke the Play-Doh, squeeze the Play-Doh. You can talk about the different colours. You can make different things and talk about what you're making. You can talk about my Play-Doh, your Play-Doh, more Play-Doh. You can give Play-Doh little bits at a time and have the child ask for a bit more each time. So Play-Doh is a really great one. You're just playing, but you're building that communication. Tea parties are really great. Yeah. You've got like the little cups and the little tea. You can talk about my cup, your cup. Pour the tea, my tea, your tea, drink the tea, more tea, tea all gone. So just things where you're doing those little games and little toys and play with your kids. Build in communication and just talk all the time. When you're around the house, just talk. Whatever you're doing, just narrate what you're doing. Oh, mummy's going to the kettle. Mummy's pressing the button. Oh, mummy's pouring some water in a cup. Mummy's going to have a cup of tea. It's probably going to get cold, but that's okay. Mummy's coming over now. Mummy's going to look for a book. Oh, mummy's got 4 books. Which book do you want to do? We've got this book, this book, this book, this book. And as you're walking around the house, whatever you're doing, just narrate what you're doing. The child is hearing your words. They're hearing the flow and the melody of your talking. They're hearing all the different speech sounds. So just talk. And for those kids that are able to play games, again, your toy library is going to have lots of games like memory match games and lotto games and like really simple board games and card games that kids can play. Such a great way to build their vocabulary, build their understanding of turn taking, build their understanding of sharing. Really great. So number 1, go join a toy library.
Yes.
Pretty much anything within that is going to be helpful. But if I could pick 3 things that you can just use for so many things, bubbles, Play-Doh, tea party sets. There's a lot you can do there.
And those things you've mentioned, I think we've got them at home. Yes. And he loves them. The bubbles, we could do them even at night time. He wants to. We're like, no, we'll do tomorrow.
Yes.
And Play-Doh everywhere.
But the ones that I really like that I find really hard to do, but it's very useful, is that what you're talking about. Talking, narrate what you're doing.
Yes.
Even if you're thinking through options, like just talk all day. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to do, but it's just I think that's something that we've kind of tried, but
it takes active.
It
thinking.
takes a lot of active thinking, a lot of active.
It does at first. It becomes a habit. Yeah. So I haven't had a baby in my house for a long time. Like I said, my youngest is 11, but we've just got a puppy. And you know what I do? I narrate everything to the puppy, and then I catch myself and go, it's a puppy. I don't need to do this because it is literally that ingrained in me and that much of a habit. So while it might seem unnatural and a bit silly at first, it does actually become second nature when you just, make that effort and you're mindful to do it all the time. It'll become second nature.
Yeah.
It might not be a bad thing for relationships. If you're the kind of person that talks and explains what you're doing, it might help with the marriage too. Not just having your kids talk. So it might be good for the marriage, I think, or the relationship.
Are you talking about me?
Love that.
Next question.
Next question. Okay.
I'm distracted here.
Okay, sure.
How can parents best work with their therapist? What kind of feedback, updates, or even videos at home would be useful?
Yeah, working with your therapist is really important because, you know, you're your child's biggest advocate. You're the one who wants the best for your child, and the therapists are doing everything they can to be able to help towards those things, but you're the one who is with your child the most. So using those therapy sessions to get involved in them, being able to see what your therapist is doing and join in. If they're singing songs, you join in with the songs. If they're building anticipation, you know, like getting out the bubbles and going, and waiting for the child to respond, then you wait, and then when the child responds, yay! You're, you know, cheering on your child. Sometimes we have parents who, and I totally get this, parents are busy, they're overwhelmed, there's so much going on, and sometimes therapy can seem like, okay, now I get a break because there's someone else going to take care of my child. I'll just kind of scroll my reels for a bit while that's happening. And I get it. I honestly do. Like, we're parents, we're busy. It's nice to just get a moment to take a breath sometimes. But I really, really encourage parents to get involved in the therapy sessions because as therapists, we're not here to fix your child. That's not what we're doing. We're working with you as a family to be able to find the best way to work with this precious little person that you've got, to work out how their mind works, how their brain is working, and to be able to equip you with things that you can do at home to continue this child's development. We see them for maybe 45 minutes a week or for some kids a fortnight. That's not going to be the thing that builds capacity. It's you being able to carry on those things at home, take what you're learning in the therapy sessions and apply them because you're the one who's with the child the most. It's really important that you are getting those notes after a session because, like you said before, when you read those notes, so for my practice, Liberty Allied Health, we write detailed progress notes after each session and we email them to you and to anyone else you want us to send them to keep everybody on the same page. But what that does is it means that you can see, so when they were playing this game, this is what it's working on. During a therapy session, I love being able to say to parents, this is what we're doing, here is why we're doing it, this is what we're working towards, but we often can't. Because if we do, we might lose a child's attention. We might, something might happen often with kids who have particularly higher needs or kids who just need a lot of attention the whole time. We are just on that child like with our attention as much as we can be, and we don't always get the chance to stop and explain why we're doing things. So that summary of notes at the end tells you everything that we couldn't tell you in the session. If we can, we will. We really will. We want to do that. If we are just 100% engaged with your child the whole time and we don't get to chat with you about it, it will be in the notes. So making sure that you're reading those notes. You might even come with questions. And again, if you have questions, we want to be able to answer those, particularly if we can engage your child with something so they can do something on their own for a bit so we can just chat. That's really great as well. But bring your questions. It might be something where sometimes you might even have a session where you actually get your child looked after by someone else and you just come as parents and go, we just want to talk for this session and just want to ask questions. Can you give us things that we can do at home? Can you make suggestions to us? So having some sessions without your child there might be a really helpful thing to be really understanding what's happening, asking the questions so that you can be completely engaged. At the end of each session saying, what's something I can do at home? So, when you're kind of getting towards the last 5-10 minutes of the session, that's a really good time to say, can you give me an idea of something to do at home? And your therapist will hopefully be able to suggest an activity, suggest something you can work on. And then when you come back the next week, being able to tell them how it went and what happened during the week. That open communication is always the best way to go with therapy. Being able to be, as parents, just engaged, interested, asking questions, giving information, telling therapists things that are happening, and then working together to be able to see this child develop and build their capacity.
And I love that that's something your team does really well. Like every time I have an opportunity to take, I actually normally look forward to it because, I can see I'm watching what the therapist is doing because then I'm thinking this is how I need to do it at home. I'm watching that interaction and I can see because my son, our son, he likes moving from one thing to the next pretty quickly.
Yes.
So as you're saying, it is the therapists are really, that attention, but they've got it. They've got that attention so well. So there's no time to really talk. But then I enjoy being in the session and I will participate in it, like you're saying.
Love that.
But I'll also sort of pull back where I don't want to distract him. but it's really what you're saying. It's actually really having that engagement is actually really helpful. And he really looks forward. Like, he spends the entire time. It's like, it's time to go. He doesn't want to go. He has been having too much fun. So, yeah, I agree.
Oh, I love that. Such a champion.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this is more for people that are starting out with the NDIS. So for family with the NDIS, what are some tips you would suggest to them to stretch the limited hours or budget in those early stages?
Yeah, look, that can be really tricky. And I think it's really important because you're allocated a certain amount for maybe 12 months, maybe 24 months. It's really important to be aware of how that's being used. And when you first get this block of funding, it looks like a lot of money, but you need to understand that within this block of money, you're not just paying for the face-to-face therapy, you're also paying for the time that the therapists are taking to write all of the reports, do things like the support plan. So you need to kind of allow that there'll be probably, I would say generally budget kind of 6 to 8 hours for the non-face-to-face time. And often we say that to parents and then we don't use it all and there's plenty left. But we just say, as a ballpark figure, allow kind of that much time, because sometimes we need to have meetings with teachers and other therapists and things like that. And then everyone is charging for those meetings. So there are, it does get used up really quickly. So to try and stretch it, you can look at how frequently you're having your therapy appointments. So for some kids, it's got to be weekly. So if we're working on a child's speech sounds, it's got to be weekly. But if that's not an issue and we're working on, maybe an older kid and we're working on social language, fortnightly sessions might be okay. Often what you'll see is speech is weekly, OT is often a fortnightly kind of thing. Psychology, often people do kind of monthly sessions for that. So you might want to just look at the frequency. Sometimes places will offer group therapy sessions. It's really tricky though, because the way that group sessions work, the NDIS say, well, this is the hourly amount, and then you divide it between how many kids there are. So it means if you've got one kid, you're still paying the full amount. If you've got 2 or 3 kids or 4 kids in that session, then it's sort of divided among you. But it does mean it's unpredictable. Every week you don't know how many people will be there, so it can help to stretch it out, or you might end up be paying, the full price for that session anyway. So it is a tricky one, but that can be a useful thing to do. Some places offer therapy in blocks, and again, it really depends on the child, but someone might say, we're going to do a 10-week block of therapy, and then you're going to have 10 weeks off, and then you're going to come back again for another 10-week block. So some OTs might do that. Not everybody does that, and it's not for every child either. So that might be something to consider. Some places might offer allied health assistant appointments as well. So what that often looks like is a speech pathology student or an occupational therapy student coming and doing the therapy, so that if you know that you don't have the funds to have therapy regularly, it might be, we have some people where they have a qualified therapist one week and then an AHA the next week, then a qualified therapist, then an AHA, and that can help. Again, it's not for everyone, particularly for kids who don't cope well with change, between one person and another. But it can be a way to stretch things out. But it is definitely tricky. And, there are parents as well who will, they'll use the NDIS until it's gone, and then they'll continue to pay out of pocket, which, I was in private practice before the NDIS, and that was the norm, where everyone came and they paid out of pocket, and they might use their private health cover. So that's what everybody did before the NDIS came along and provided this funding. But what it means is that we absolutely have some families who will say, yeah, I'll do NDIS for 8 months and then I'll pay out of pocket for 4 months. So different families have different means of being able to make it work. But the really important thing is to do the budgeting. Be on top of every, just keep a record of all of the invoices, keep track of everything that's happening. There are, cancellation fees apply as well. The NDIS covers cancellation fees, so that if you can't, if your child is unwell or something like that, then the NDIS will still cover that cancellation fee. You can use that time to say, oh, my child's sick, but hey, could I use their session time to have a phone call with you? Can I ask you my questions while my child's home sick? So you can use things like those cancellation fees. You're paying it anyway out of your funding, where the NDIS is paying it. So if that money's being spent anyway, use it to ask you questions. So there are just different ways that you can use therapy wisely, that therapy time, therapy funding, you can use it wisely to get the most out of that funding amount that you get.
I like that part you talked about, things like, because that's one thing we haven't thought about, you as a parent having your own session, for lack of a better word. And I think for us, we found especially with OT, because there's a lot of like life skills we were trying to develop with our son, and we found that, you know, as much as we wanted, you know, the OT to do some stuff, in the early days, we rocked up with a lot of questions, and a lot of time it was more just us wanting to be told what to do, as opposed to like, having our son get the session. Obviously, obviously the son is getting the session, but a lot of it was us just needing that, what do I call it, coaching,
Yes,
and just the support to know what to do, because there's a lot of do that. There's a lot of myths around speech pathology, and I was hoping today we can be like we can play mythbusters today. So one myth a lot of people say is speech pathology is about pronouncing words. What's the bigger picture?
Yeah, look, like I said, there is a lot of people have a very narrow view of what speech pathology is, for sure. So sometimes, if people don't think it's about stuttering, the next thing is you fix lisps. Yes, we do that too, a little bit. But the scope for speech pathology is so huge, and the bigger picture is speech pathology is about all aspects of communication. So that's the big part of it, the speech, the language, the social language, the literacy. If it's to do with communication, then that's what we do.
Next myth, true or false? Therapy will fix speech by next term.
Yeah, myth. Definitely a myth. Look, you know what? I have had, in 20 years, I can think of 2 kids where we fixed something up within a term. And for both of them, it was literally a lisp. They were saying the S the wrong way, and they fixed it up. And these were kids who were in school, super motivated. They were the ones who wanted to fix it. They practiced constantly and really, really quickly fixed it up. That's not the norm. Usually when people say to me, how long is speech therapy going to be? It entirely depends on the child. You know, we have kids who they come to us when they're really, really little, and we're working on things as a toddler, but then when they're a 5-year-old, they still have needs. And I'm talking here particularly with kids with significant needs, so with significant autism needs or intellectual disabilities or cerebral palsy, things like that. You know, the needs change. The needs don't go away. The needs change. So we work and we build capacity and we give them skills as a little one, but then as a school-age child, we work and we build capacity and we're giving them the skills that they need for that age. But then they go, you know, higher up in primary school, their social needs change again. In high school, their social needs change again. And a lot of these kids we've recently opened up to young adults, because what we've realised is we were kind of discharging our 18-year-olds. Okay, yep, you know, we're paediatrics, so we'll finish here. And they were coming back going, we don't have anywhere to go. Could you just keep helping us? And so then we kind of said, well, I guess like we're sending you to not get help, and you still really need that help with these adulting kind of skills, with being able to understand social communication within a workplace. What does an interview look like? How do I interview? How do I relate to my work colleagues? And so because we were having people at this different stage of life still needing that help and that support, then we opened up to kind of allow that to continue. So for some kids, speech therapy is going to look like, for some kids, we've literally been part of their journey through to young adulthood. For some kids, it's been, they've come to us and then they've gone on break and then they've come back, and they've just come for stages at different parts of life. For other kids whose needs might not be as significant, if they have just a speech disorder where they can't say their speech sounds, or a language disorder, they might be with us for 1 to 2 years, and then we discharge them. We might check in, but that might be it. That might be the end of their speech journey at that point. So it depends entirely on the child, but it is not unusual for kids to continue to need the support throughout their journey towards and beyond young adulthood. And for others, it's something where, you know, allow kind of 12 to 24 months and that might be it. So depends on the child.
It definitely depends on the child. And I think the key for us that's really helped us is to know that this is a long-term process. This
Absolutely.
is not a quick fix. It's not a little zap. You're not going
That's right.
to take them in the back of the room and do some stuff with
Yes.
them and then they are all fixed. For us, it's been like having that patience, understanding this is a long-term process. It
Yes.
could be for the next few months. It could be for the next few years. It could be there. And, you know, and I think the encouragement that I have to give a lot of parents is when we started with an nonverbal kid 2 years ago. Now we've got a little chatter, a little chatterbox, 2.5 years later. And, it's all a testament of all the work that's been put in, from your team, from the school, having all those different families, having the whole team of people coming together. Because like I said, I remember sometimes last year, sometimes we had a big team between your team, the school and stuff like that to sort of like work out the strategies for the next 12 months. So yeah, it's thinking about, for us, what's really helped us is thinking about this from a very long term and understanding that it takes a whole village,
Yes.
for lack of a better word.
Absolutely, yeah.
And being able to tap on the different parts of the village, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your childcare, whether it's different people that are involved. Just to follow on to that, how do you coach parents through the inevitable plateaus, the ups and the downs? Like with our son, like I said, we could see, now we can see a lot of consistent growth. But during the early days, it was a big spurt of growth. And then would have stagnation.
Yes.
Because I remember, I don't know whether I don't know we ever told you this, because initially we scheduled an assessment for autism. And then we were like, he made so many changes. And then you're like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the assessment. We'll cancel that. We'll do it later. And then went through months of stagnation. How do you coach parents through those plateaus so that they can be able to sort of stay focused and committed to the long term?
Yeah, and I think, again, it's going to depend on every child.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have some kids where it is just like you build skill upon skill upon skill, and it is that slow but consistent progress. And for other kids, it is like, oh, wow, they've just made so much progress, and then it does even out and plateau, and then they make another lot of progress, kind of like that physical growth, like it just seems like they're kind of the same size, and they have this big growth spurt, and then it's like they're the same size for a while. That's kind of what it can feel like when a child, their development and their growth is plateauing, but it really comes down to celebrating the little things and being able to say, you know what, this isn't our end point. We're not there. We are building on what he's got. We are going to continue to model. We're going to continue to practice. We're going to continue to implement these strategies, and he is going to get there. We just need to keep on going, keep on being consistent in our approach. And sometimes we might even change our approach a little bit, but you do see those plateaus when the child is going to still make that growth later on, but sometimes that's just a child. Big growth, nothing, big growth. But in that stage where there's nothing obvious happening, there's a lot happening in their brains. So we might not see it as words. We might not see it as they're using speech sounds. We might not even see it as they're using more words on their device. But what's happening is that there's growth happening within their perception, within their understanding, within their being able to pick up on, some of the social interactions that they're looking at. They're having that modeling that you are doing. They're picking up on your tones of voice. They're picking up on the way that people around them are interacting. And during that plateauing time, the reason that sometimes we see then a big lot of growth afterwards is because during that time where it looks like they've plateaued, their brain has been processing, and then it looks like that sudden big growth. Again, back to my kids when they were babies, my son who's 16 now, when he was really little, again, we were teaching him keyword signing. Now, as a speech pathologist, I always say to parents, we do keyword signing, it won't hold back their speech. If they're going to talk, it's not going to hold it back. And then I was doing this with my first child, and then my son just really loved signing. And so he wasn't really talking, and he had all these signs, and I was like, maybe the research is wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not true. Maybe he's not going to talk. What have I done? Am I a terrible mother? And then the funniest thing happened. He actually had a few spoken words, but about 50 signs, right? So he was, I think, 14 months at this point, and maybe a bit younger. And then we got to this point where he suddenly wanted to say, want biscuit. That's what it was. He wanted to sign want biscuit. But now that was the first time that he put two signs together, and suddenly it just seemed like so much effort to use two signs together that he just kind of went, want biscuit. So he signed it, and then he said it, and then literally the next day he went from having a few spoken words to like 50 spoken words, right? He just swapped. And so we could say, oh, there was nothing, and then he suddenly had 50 words. But no, that's not what happened. What was actually happening during that, he's got a few spoken words here, nothing, was actually he was learning in a different way. So he was picking up on what things meant, he was listening to spoken words, he was building his language differently through keyword signs, and he got those, overnight 50 words, not because it was sudden progress, but because he was using what we had been building gradually over that time. So that time where he was processing, he was listening, he was taking things in, meant that we suddenly had this enormous growth of verbal words, spoken words, because of all of the things that had been happening during that time where it looked like his verbal side had plateaued. So there are things that are still happening. Your child is still learning, processing, developing during that time, but it just might not be as obvious as when they have that sudden leap. But during that time, you celebrate the little things.
Oh, yes. We have learned that.
Yes. Yep.
Can you share a favorite early intervention success story that still gives you goosebumps?
Yeah, look, actually, this is such a favourite one. Years and years ago, I used to see this gorgeous little 3-year-old girl. Oh my goodness, she was just the most adorable little thing you've ever seen. She was so cute. And she only spoke in babble, didn't have any kind of functional speech or language. And so I worked with her for a little while. I didn't get to see her the whole time, but I was the one who was kind of one of her first speech pathologists. And I got to work on kind of bringing in that speech and language. We brought in some symbolic communication as well, so that she could hand over a picture to show what she wanted. And she went on to develop verbal language, but not only that, became like this amazingly accomplished young woman who is now studying speech pathology at university.
Oh, wow.
She came and did work experience with us a couple of years ago, and it was just such a joy, such an absolute joy and delight to have been a little part of her journey. So, that was super, super exciting.
Oh, wow.
So she's one of my favourites. I have so many stories. And, like some of the kids that I used to see years back are parents themselves now. And I have a few where I've just touched base with parents down the track and heard all these great stories. I've got, like one girl that I was working with very, very early on, and this was just a minor thing we were working on, but she's studying medicine, and there are some great stories of how kids are just thriving, absolutely thriving. So it's been so special to just be part of their journeys over that time. Love it.
Beautiful. That's really lovely. What's one sentence of grace would you give to parents who feel late to the party?
Sure. I think I would say it's never too late to make progress. There's this, I think it's a Chinese proverb that goes something like this: the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And that idea that, okay, that's okay. It's all right. You didn't know that your child needed help back then. That's no worries. Starting today is going to be better than starting in a year's time. The second best time is always going to be today, right now. So, it's never too late to make progress. If you suddenly decide, maybe I've missed some things early on, it's okay. That's fine. Whatever you can do at this point in time, if you can start now, we can see progress.
And why early intervention?
Early intervention is really important because children's brains are like little sponges when they're little. They just absorb things, they take things in. And when we can be part of starting early and giving them good habits when they're little, being able to model that, for the speech pathology side, being able to model language to them when they're really little and they're absorbing it all, being able to help them with their speech sounds as they develop, being able to put in functional communication when they're little means that it avoids that later frustration and the behavioural side of things that might happen because you've got someone who desperately wants to be able to communicate but has no way of doing it. And so, of course, that then leads to, those frustrated behaviours and those meltdowns. The earlier that we can intervene and start to, as again, speech pathology side, start to build in that language, that functional communication, being able to engage with people, being able to, if their mouths are not ready to talk, being able to use symbols or pictures to communicate, it brings down that frustration. So the earlier that we can do that, the earlier the child is able to convey what they're thinking, what they want, what they need, how they feel, those kinds of things. So we want to be able to put those things in as early as possible because little brains are just so ready to learn. So the earlier we can start, the better. But again, it's never too late to start.
I wholeheartedly agree with you because we've noticed even with our son, the more he's built that capacity to communicate or to regulate better emotionally, the more it's even improved things like behaviors in the level of his happiness and frustration. The fact that he can actually articulate what he wants to do, and obviously we still need to work on his words and him be able to be more clear in terms of what he says. But yeah, the more he's been able to communicate what he wants to say, the more the confidence. You can even see his confidence and his personality come out even more. So we are a great advocate of early intervention because we know it works.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So as we start to conclude, we've got a few write-in questions, or we are not write-in questions, but by the way, really grateful for your time today. We really thank you for all the insight today. I'm sure people watching this will find it, will really learn a lot. Lightning round. Favorite board book or for sparking language? What's your favorite?
It's got to be either Dear Zoo or Where is the Green Sheep? Those are my absolute favourites.
We'll make sure we link them in there so people can find them. What's your go-to toy?
Oh, there are so many.
You can name as many as you want.
Look, I'm going to go again with Bubbles. I'm going to list off a whole lot here. So Bubbles, Play-Doh, tea party sets. Also, Mr. Potato Head is a great one. Love Mr. Potato Head. Train sets are really great. So much you can do with that. Pop the Pig and Pop-Up Pirate are really, really good ones as well. Dolls are great. So, just being able to do that doll play and feeding the doll. Characters, like little character figurines, like the Little People sets. Oh, I love the Little People sets. They are so good. There's so much you can do with those. So things with character figurines and that sort of thing are really great. They would be, and again, toys are expensive, but toy libraries have all these things. Those would be my absolute go-tos.
Awesome. Flat white or long black during early sessions? Or you're not a coffee person, or is it more of a Red Bull?
During sessions, it's going to be my water. This water bottle goes everywhere with me because I am constantly talking, and so I need to look after my voice. Yeah. But it's going to be, white coffee during my breaks for sure to keep me going.
Because what you do is very mentally involving. And,
it is.
And you have to be like so much. I've got so much admiration for the therapists because just being able to keep a kid that involved, that engaged for such a long time, it is a lot of work. So I have a lot of appreciation for just what you guys do and the amount of mental effort it takes to sort of do that. Thank you so much for coming in today. Did you have any other questions?
No, it's been amazing having you. And honestly, we are so grateful for the way your team works with our son. Like, we have seen tremendous growth.
So pleased.
I mean, from him not really talking, really being non-verbal, and seeing him now talking, it's like, awesome. And we know how hard it is for parents because we've gone through this journey ourselves, whereby you're just desperate to hear a word. So seeing him talk in sentences, and we are just so grateful. Your team, they are amazing, all of them. They work so hard, and having you just take your time to come and spend the time with us. We are really, really grateful.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
What's the best way for people to reach out, contact, anything you recommend from a resource point of view?
Yeah, sure. I guess it depends where you are on your journey, but if the speech OT side is something that you're wanting to look at, then if you have a look on our website, which is libertyalliedhealth.com.au, then that's a good place to start for that. If you're looking at the NDIS side of things, then going to their website, there's a heap of information on there. Autism SA also have a whole lot of information available there. And even just going to your GP if you have concerns, that's a really good place to start, because they'll be able to point you in a good direction for being able to know kind of where to go. If you've got a really little one, you might check in with your CAFS nurse as well, the Child and Families Health Service. Might be able to give you some good information, and libraries are another really good source of information. They often have sections on child development that can be helpful. So those are some good places to start, but going to your GP is always a good idea. And if you have concerns, then making an appointment. You don't need a referral to see a speech pathologist or an OT. You can just call up and make that appointment. So if you have concerns about your child's communication, then making a speech pathology appointment is a really good idea. And if you have concerns with the way that your child is using their body, then you can make an appointment with an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist to look into that side of things as well. So it's always a helpful thing to do, just to have that check. But yeah, GPs are always a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.